I'm Ashley Purdon with Pioneer Horsemanship, and today I wanted to show you how I prefer to halter my horses. This is also going to show you a little bit on how to get a horse to lower his head down. Now we're using an experienced horse here, Dylan, and he already knows how to do this. In the future, I'm going to make another video with a horse that hasn't been taught how to lower their head, but this will give you just a general idea of how I like to do this. So when you're haltering, I want you to keep in mind that your horse can either be a partner with you, helping you get the halter on, or they can be avoiding you, trying to not let you get the halter on. So a lot of times, it's my experience from what I've seen from my students when they first start working with me, is they'll be haltering their horse and their horse's head will be like way over here, and that's him trying to avoid the halter. If I instead have him bring his head around here, I can halter him better, and he's more in a yes posture, he's cooperating with me, and I'm just setting the tone for my ride. Haltering your horse is really the first thing you do when you go to interact with your horse. So it's important that this step not just be overlooked and rushed through, because your horse is constantly keeping tabs on how you're doing things and if you're doing them well and earning their respect and their trust, or if you're not and they're getting a little bit resentful because you're rushing them or pushing them or however it ends up being that you're presenting yourself. So I'm not going to completely turn him loose because he's probably going to leave, but if I were going to approach him in the pasture and he was loose, the first place that I'm going to put my hands on him is at his poll and at his nose. And this would be after I approach. Actually, I should clarify that. So this would be the second place that I put my hands on. As I approach, I'm going to come to his shoulder because that's the least sensitive part of him that I could come to, and it's kind of a friendly spot. You'll see horses mutually groom in this area of their withers, and that's kind of their place that they come up and greet each other. If you go straight to your horse's head, a lot of times that can be too much pressure for your horse, and they will walk away from you. So if I have already greeted him on his shoulder, now I can slide up to his head, and I can slide my hand up to his poll. He's actually going to be a great demo here because as soon as my hand got here, he knows I'm going to halter him, and he's leaning away from me. So that's him not engaging in the process. He did drop his head, though, so that is positive. If my horse didn't drop his head, I'm just going to take my fingers and kind of make them stiff, put them on either side of his poll, and squeeze a little bit and press down. And I'm going to wait for him to drop his head a little. And I might even need this hand on his nose just to keep him from leaving. There you go. And you might experience that as well. And then as soon as they drop their nose, you're going to release like they suddenly got hot to the touch, and you're going to take your hands off. Good boy, Dylan. So if they put their head too low, this is another thing that they'll do. You can just put your hand to the other side and kind of lift up and bring them around. So this is the frame that I want him in for haltering. Somewhere in here where it's fairly easy to grab him. If his head is too low, this is not a convenient spot. He's not really helping me out. And if his head is too high and I'm having to reach up, that's not going to help either. Or like we talked about, if he's facing away from me. So the first order of business is to get my halter around him. I see a lot of people going right for their noses at first. And organization is everything. If you come up to your horse and your halter's kind of a wadded mess, you're giving them a big window of opportunity to leave. If you approach your horse this way and try to put their halter on their face like this, you can see that that offended him a little bit. He wasn't in love with that one. That's putting a lot of pressure on them, and it's kind of visually for them a weird way to approach as well. So I'm going to get his head. I'm going to reach over. If he put his head up too high, I can actually do this from underneath too, and bring his jaw back toward me. Perfect. Now he's in a yes frame. I do not have permission to halter him until he is here, so I'm not even going to try until I got him in this spot. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to make sure I'm organized. I've got my loop and my string of my halter together, and I'm going to pass that string to my right hand on the other side. And at this point, I pretty much have him caught. And I can also take my halter now and push down with it to bring his head down a little. I can pull him over to bring him over. And then I can just scoop his nose up without having my hands all up in his face. When you have a young horse with a really sensitive nose, like a foal that you're trying to halter for the first time, or you have a horse that maybe just doesn't have a lot of human experience, it's really scary and a lot of pressure for your horse to have your hands on their mouth. And it's actually something I spend a lot of time getting my horses good with. So when they're good and broke like Dylan, this isn't going to be so offensive or scary. But when they're inexperienced, that's a lot of pressure coming right at them that way. So if you can keep your hands just kind of up by his eyes so he can see you a little bit better and scoop the halter on, that'll go a lot better for you. I also want to show you the halter knot here specifically. So we're going to take our long string through our loop here. I want to make sure that my center knot here is right under his jowls. I don't want it hanging too far down. This would be a halter that's too loose. We got to be really careful because this is going to be a much more sensitive area, and this bone here on his nose gets really, really thin at the end. And if you have your halter too low and they were to pull on you, you could actually fracture that bone. So we want this up a little bit higher on the bridge of his nose. Get this centered, and then we're going to tie our knot. I like to hold the top of my loop with my left hand and kind of pinch it. Then I'm going to poke the string towards his eye, and I'm going to come through my loop this way. So that way, my knot actually got tied onto the loop and not above it. The way I see this done a lot of the time is that the knot is done up high. And if you tie it this way and your horse were to pull back or were to step on their lead rope and make this tight, or even pull on you and make it tight, you're actually going to end up having to cut your halter off later. It's very, very difficult to get this knot undone if it got too tight. This one, however, if it got snug on you, you can always push it loose again, which is just obviously going to be much more preferable. So once I get my horse haltered and he's being accepting of everything, I can go on with my plan for the day, whether that was riding or groundwork or grooming or whatever it is, and I've made sure to make him a part of the process and cooperate with me as we haltered. So I'm Ashley Purdon with Pioneer Horsemanship. I hope you enjoyed this tip, and I'll see you guys soon.